next group we're going to talk about are amphibians. And amphibians are vertebrates that must lay their eggs in water, but can also live on land. There's a huge diversity of amphibians. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about frogs today, and I just want to say up front, frogs are a bit unusual in that they have adapted to a certain form of motion that, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call hopping, and have a series of skeletal and muscular adaptations to go with that. Some of the other amphibians, things like salamanders and newts, have motion that is actually not too dissimilar to what we find in a fish. That again, they have a head, they have a skeleton, they have a series of ribs, but now they have a true pelvic girdle and a true pectoral girdle. And they have little arms that stick almost straight down from their body. And to move, what salamanders do is, again, they contract muscles on one side of their body, tilt in that direction, put a leg down, and then tilt in the other directions, and they're using that same S-shaped sinusoidal motion as what a fish does when they move. Frogs, on the other hand, are a whole nother story. If we look at a frog skeleton, it has some unusual adaptations. That we have a frog skeleton here. At the top, there is a very large skull. Behind the skull, we have a series of vertebrae. We then have a pectoral grid, or not pectoral, but
Pectoral girdle.
Pectoral girdle. They consist of a scapula, a humerus, a radius, and an ulna, and some phalanges. In this case, he has 4 phalanges. That's very interesting. We also have a pelvic girdle that in this case consists of an elongated ilium. This entire structure here is the ilium. It has then a femur, tibia and fibula, and then some carpals and metacarpals down there. Part of what makes this frog anatomy so different is that they hop. To hop, they have to have extremely long and strong muscles that when they contract, they force those hind legs back. This elonged ilium creates a surface where a muscle can contract, could attach clear down here at the bottom and run clear up here to the top of the ilium, so that muscle would be like 4 inches long. And that gives a tremendous amount of long muscle to contract and create force to push those legs down and cause the frog to jump. Some other interesting things about this skeleton and their adaptation to jumping is that if you look closely at their vertebrae here, you'll see that those vertebrae are fused. They're literally calcium carbonate from one vertebrae to another. They're not independent. They can't swivel so that it's fused. So basically, the frog skeleton is fused all the way from the neck down to the ilium and creates one structure. That structure gives tremendous amount of strength, A, to hold all those muscles that are contracting, and B, to hold the frog in the right position as it jumps. That if their body was folding in the middle, they couldn't jump near as well. They then have a relatively small pectoral girdle that also helps with jumping. And it's primarily used in this case as when they jump, frogs tend to land and catch and slow down with their front feet. Their front feet are slowing that motion of them hitting the ground. Okay. Now, for the lab exam, you're going to need to know all those bones in the frog. At the appendix of your lab manual, there is a picture of a frog skeleton, and you should be able to label all the bones in there and be able to regurgitate them on the lab exam.
I just wanted to add what Dr. Williams discussed here. He mentioned the term force a lot. There's a lot of force generated in the hopping and landing for a frog. And to bear that force is not just for muscle attachment, but we also have to have very strong bones. And that's why if you look closely, there's fusion of bones here. When you mentioned the tibia and fibula, and on a frog, those two bones are fused into one. Do you think that would increase the strength of that bone? Okay. And another thing, if you look at landing, there's a lot of force when a frog lands on its forelimbs. If you look at, we have a fused radius and ulna as well to bear the force of the landing motion. And so, and think about when you fuse bones also, they're stronger, but you have fewer bones. You have fewer bones, which makes you tend to be a little bit lighter. So again, a frog is trying to overcome gravity as well. And so it's not going to have any unnecessary bones than needed. Okay.
But we're saying again, if you compare what I showed you for a salamander compared with a frog, it's an entirely different anatomy. And that's an adaptation to their form of movement. It's kind of interesting. Should we try to show the frog?
Well, we have a little green tree frog that's escaping over here. Now, this little guy is more adapted for life in the trees and not so much life in the ground, so the hop is not going to be
as impressive,
but he's going to generate some height. And if you look closely, this little guy is going to, well, that was a pretty good hop. And I don't know if you can see that, but the first thing to hit the ground when he lands are going to be his forelimbs. Maybe one more little hop before he goes off the table. Whoa. Yeah, that was pretty quick. But this is a green tree frog. One more jump or not? We can ask him, we can anoint, well, that was a pretty good one. So there's our frog. Now, the next jump, buddy, you're going to be off the table, so. See, look how he's prepared. You can actually see the little bulges on the back where the ilium starts. Whoops. And look how it positions himself correctly. The back legs folded under to generate maximum force for the hop. And I always tell my students that a broken bone on a frog, whether in the forelimb or the hind limb, would essentially be a death sentence. And so there's extreme selective advantage to strengthen those bones to keep that from happening.